Hey y'all, welcome to my YouTube channel, Going There with Gab. This is my first official video and I'm nervous as all hell, so I will be looking at my notes. Please don't judge me. But this video is part 2 to my blog post, My Path to the Ivy League, called Hindsight is 2020. This video is kind of going over 5 questions that I wish I had asked before I committed to going to Dartmouth, and I think are applicable to asking before you commit to any college. I made this video because I didn't think talking about my application process was enough. I think that there's a lot that I wish I had known, and I wanted to share that information with other people. So here we go. As a person with depression who used to cope with binge eating, I didn't think about my health resources would be constrained in a college town versus a cityscape. I didn't ask about how easy it was to find a therapist on or off campus. I didn't think about how cost effective it is to get fresh produce and healthy food. What are the food options for real, other than like, does the stuff taste nasty? Because I definitely Googled that. But your health will impact your time in college, and comprehensive health is about more than just where the nearest clinic and gym is. As a child of military servicemen, I grew up in homogeneously middle-class communities. And I knew that the Ivy League was elite, but I was not prepared to be with the 1% of the nation and low-key of the world. I was working at a student cafe, and I had students, yelling at me about what are the specials, and in the same breath turning to their friends like, let's take my dad's private jet to Coachella this weekend. And not only is that physically disorienting, it can also be mentally disorienting. And on top of that, it may affect, your interactions with other students. How understanding will your group members be when you can't meet until 10 p.m. after the dining hall shift is over? And also social norms like Greek life or club membership may be cost prohibitive. So have you thought about how that might impact how you make friends? And so the socio-economic breakdown of the student body is something that I wish I had known beforehand. As I said before, I knew the Ivy League was gonna be pretty white, but I guess I didn't know how Black I was in white spaces. Back in 2012, I think I was identifying as a woman of color more than anything, maybe at my most biracially Black. And I think that was because in the military towns I grew up in, my father's name preceded me, and my father's a white man, and so I kind of had that passing privilege. And so I didn't really know what it meant to move through the world as a person who was scripted solely as Black. Or at least I hadn't opened my mind to understanding that that was my lived experience. We're still working through that. That's a topic for my therapist. But in terms of the college application process, I guess I didn't think about how it would impact my experience in the classroom, in the food service industry, if you're someone who needs to hold a job to pay tuition, and even in my friendships. So I could really go in on this topic here, on myself and my history, but that's definitely something that if you're someone who's of a racial minority or a religious minority, that I would hope that you thought critically about before accepting a position in a university. I adjusted my camera so you could better see my outfit, mostly because I'm living for this sweater. But back to the topic at hand. The fourth question is, how isolated is this campus from a larger community? Oh boy. So thinking back about my blog post, my parents described the distraction of a city as a negative and, intuitively the isolation of Hanover, New Hampshire as a positive. And while that isolation allowed me to focus on my studies, it also isolated the campus, its administration, its students from the outside world. This meant that even at times I was physically stuck because it was cost prohibitive to travel from Hanover, New Hampshire to anywhere else. But even more than that, the isolation of the woods created an environment that was ripe for violence. And this leads me to my next question, which I think is really important for students to consider when they're applying for colleges. And that is, how safe is this campus? I cannot stress enough how important this question is. Although I was aware of college statistics regarding rape and sexual assault, I didn't think about how the combination of my identities, Black, queer, woman, would impact my physical safety. I didn't think about campus climate I didn't even really know what that meant on campus until my sophomore year, and I wished I had thought about what campus climate could be. I didn't think about anything really to do with campus life other than how I would make friends, and I wish I had thought about safety more concretely. I think that I may be in a minority of students who had such a negative college experience, but the proliferation of events that took place in my 4 years in Hanover, New Hampshire, really in the Dartmouth network, really hammered home an understanding for me that it was not a safe place. I wish that before I accepted, I was able to ask students how they felt that the college administration and staff, whomever powers that be, responded to student concerns about safety. What tensions they felt on campus, be it from professors or from other students, and how these things impacted their daily lives, if at all. I'm going to add an addendum to this video where I discuss more of the safety aspects specifically related to Dartmouth, because I promised myself I was going to be open and honest with this platform, regardless of how hard it was. And I think that I owe that to all of you. So there will be an addendum at the end of this video for anyone specifically considering going to Dartmouth. Okay, great, you've given me 5 solid questions with like some bullet points of questions, but like, who the hell am I supposed to talk about this to? And for me, the answer is students, 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 and student support staff. If you are able to visit campus, which I highly encourage, talk to your tour guide. But also try and talk to just students who are on campus. If they don't look busy, meaning their head is down, they're walking fast past you, they got headphones in, they got books in their hand, whatever. You know what it looks like when someone looks busy and they don't want to talk to you. If someone looks open to a conversation, stop them and be like, hey, can I ask you a couple questions about being a student here? And try and get as many opinions as possible. Particularly for someone who's looking to build communities that are more identity-based, talk to those students about their experience. You will get a variety of answers, but at least you'll have more information. And the reason I say student support staff is because I was someone who worked in student support, and they are the staff who are hired by the college. Although they are administrators, so their perspective is not entirely their own. They care so much. And they actually have a lot of useful information you wouldn't think about. And so student support staff can look like deans advising or minority student officers, even Title IX officers. These things look different at different schools. For Dartmouth, it was called OPAL, Office of Pluralism and Leadership. And so talk to these people in the communities that you may identify with, and if they can't be candid with you, they can point you in the direction of a student who can and will. And that is definitely an invaluable resource. This concludes my path to the Ivy League, part 2, Hindsight is 2020. I hope that you found this video helpful, whether you're going through the college application process or someone you know is. I hope that you share it, you like it, you comment on it. I want to hear anything and everything. Hey y'all, so this is the addendum as promised. For those who are specifically considering attending Dartmouth, this is a response to the 5th question, how safe is this campus, as it relates to my college experience. Now, this is by no means an extensive understanding of this question, but I wanted to provide a brief timeline as to what made me, after my 4 years, even during, come to the conclusion that Dartmouth was not a place that was invested in my safety as a student. This is going to be kind of hard for me to talk about, so I'm going to be checking my notes. Please just bear with me, and I hope that this is helpful to people who are specifically considering attending Dartmouth. Whew. Okay. So in my first year, students posted death and rape threats towards me and other activists on a site called Board of Baker, which is Dartmouth's version, or I should say was, because it's now dismantled, but it was Dartmouth's version of Yik Yak, so like an anonymous site where there's no names, there's just usernames, and people could just post whatever the hell they want. And when I brought this up to campus security, they told me to just log out. In my second year, Board of Baker, this is just before it got dismantled, a student posted a literal step-by-step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 how to rape guide for another specific student, and the administration only responded when that student went to the local police and the person who posted it was IP address was tracked and they were arrested. Further on in the year, when I was studying abroad and I was attacked and I attempted to report it to our supervising faculty, he refused to follow up with the college and told me I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and that these things happen. In my third year, Dartmouth lost its 35th member of faculty, who was a person of color, to a peer institution due to lack of institutional support for their research, tenure denial, and literal just support as a faculty member of color on Dartmouth's campus. And so students were protesting, and we were talking to the dean of the faculty. And when we asked them why there was such a lack of support for faculty of color, specifically regarding ethnic studies, he told us that culture was not a good enough reason to study something academically. Later that year, when a number of student leaders on campus were exposed as rapists, the Afro-American Society, held a community forum where we tried to organize our student body with a group of community standards for safety. We had an independent moderator come in, someone who was highly respected in the community by damn near everyone, and we spent almost 3 hours in a room, over 30 students, and we could not agree on the community principle: we will not tolerate rapists in our community. We couldn't get a room on board with that mission, a room of my peers and students. And in my final year, there's so much, but some of the highlights, I guess. Conservative students routinely and openly threatened to call ICE on undocumented students. Members of the KKK assembled on our quad to celebrate the American flag. Not to mention the students who were in a fraternity called TriCap who routinely wore KKK sweatshirts around campus. And I think in my senior spring, a member of the community, a man, was breaking into all women's residences, like shaking them in their sleep, scaring them, writing messages in Sharpie on fridges saying, "I will rape and kill you," stealing underwear. And in response to one of the incidences at a sorority house, when the sorority member was talking to campus security, they told her, "Well, you know the reputation of your house." Being isolated in the woods meant that many students, staff, administrators acted with impunity and perpetuated racial and sexual terror. Some of these terrors are Googleable, like the Bloods and Crips party of 2014, which was, highlighted as the first school at the end of the Dear White People movie, where, students performed in blackface. There was no administrative punishment to any of that. As well as recently as the Title IX lawsuit of 2018 that was recently settled. You can look into that, read that online. But some of these incidences aren't Googleable, like the egging of Indigenous students on what should be known as Indigenous Peoples Day and on campus was celebrated as Columbus Day. The number of students placed on forced medical leave and academic suspension, the number of students of color placed on forced medical leave and academic suspension, and the slow decrease in financial aid that you receive across your 4 years. Although I'm sure some of these incidences occur on other college campuses, these are not unique problems. The concentration of these events at Dartmouth specifically was by no means separate from the isolation of the environment in which they occurred. If it happened in Hanover, it stayed in Hanover, and in most cases, those that happened to were either too powerless or too exhausted to fight beyond their immediate circumstances. And so things like that continue to happen. In short, that place was dangerous as hell. Please visit Dartmouth if you're considering it, other college campuses also if you're considering it, and investigate for yourself. I will say I graduated in 2017, and so the things in my senior year were happening in 2016 with the rise of Trump, and I don't know if that means things are better or worse now, but I do know that time changes some things, but not all things. So be careful. And yeah, by faith, without fear, we're going there.